Danny Smiles here, the 29th edition of ItalFest. We're gonna make a recipe from Abruzzo. We share actually the same recipe in Frosinone as in Abruzzo, and it's called zagne fagioli. So really an amazing pasta fagioli with a homemade pasta, almost like lasagna, just cut differently and just like mal tagliati almost. And it's just such a nice, comforting meal that I grew up eating. So we're gonna make my little version. You'll need tomato sauce, pancetta, onions, garlic, a mix of beans. You could soak your beans, you could buy canned beans. If you buy canned beans, it's better to soak them, but if you don't have time and you buy the canned beans, as long as you really rinse them under water to really get all that like bean liquid that might thicken your sauce too much. So really rinse those out, and then you'll have nice little tomato sauce, and then rosemary, just a bit of thyme. We're gonna do the sauce first. We're gonna let that go down for a nice hour, and then we're gonna make our fresh pasta. We're gonna start with onions. You know, for pasta fagioli, for some reason, Italian cooking is also like, I try to remember what my grandma or how my grandma used to cook, and I just remember red onion was extremely present in our kitchen. At that time, even when I was young, I mean, I used to love eating. I never thought I was gonna become a chef, but I really loved making fresh pasta in the basement with her. I used to love seeing all the ingredients that used to go into every recipe, and I remember the red onion was the one, and she always used to say, this is cipolla rossa. So really, that's the one that we want. So really in a pasta fagioli, same thing. That's the base, red onion, garlic, celery. I don't put carrots in mine. I find that it's a bit too sweet. And it's a bit of that sweetness that I don't want in a pasta fagioli. I kind of want it to have like that nice, like, you know, tomato-y and have those nice little accents. So I really skip the carrots in a pasta fagioli. So, 2 ways of cutting an onion. They're gonna melt down in the olive oil because you really want them to confit, you know? You go medium heat. Beautiful Abruzzese olive oil. Probably shouldn't be cooking with this expensive stuff, but you know what? For you guys, we whip out the nice stuff. Really, the onions go in. Nice little red onion. So using red onion will give you that sweetness. So that's why I really don't put carrots in my pasta fagioli. So it's all about heat control. Remember, want them to be nice and translucent. Have a bit of color, but not really like scorched. While that's going, then we could put our celery. I didn't put a lot of olive oil because contrary to start the pan with pancetta, I usually used to start my pancetta and then I used to cook all my vegetables in the pancetta olive oil, but I find that it was just too heavy at times. I like to give it more of this base than to have like just like the flavor of pancetta. So I like the olive oil with the onions, with the garlic. It just has a nicer like vegetable taste. So I used to add the pancetta. I used to start with the pancetta in everything. But then I used to cook in the fat of the pancetta. But I really, you know, I kind of don't enjoy that like taste so much, or that fattiness. And like, you really want to taste the beans. You really want, the pancetta is supposed to add and not be the main attraction of the zagne fagioli. So I got the pancetta here. I'll take out the top skin. And then same thing, kind of just get in there. And just a bit of fat. And by constant, like, you know, mixing of the vegetables. And notice I didn't put the garlic yet because we don't want the garlic to burn. Here's the pancetta going in, more of the fat. It's gonna give us that nice little pork flavor that we want. That's why you don't need a lot of olive oil, because you have those nice pieces of pancetta that just get the heat. The minute they touch the heat, they become like this beautiful translucent piece of fat. And I remember when you first start cooking, you know, you're starting with the pancetta and all the fat, and you really want to preserve the fat and cook all the vegetables in the fat. But I think that there's nice of like that olive oil with the vegetables, and really having the pancetta that's actually cooking in the tomato sauce gives it such a different depth to this sauce, which is quite spectacular. A bit of the rosemary, nice little strong herb. Kind of noticed a lot of Abruzzese recipes have rosemary, so. But also just, you know, one of my favorites. It just gives it a nice little, I mean, you could deglaze with white wine, you could deglaze with red wine. Those are things that you could do it, but I just let it go. Just tomatoes. And I'll lower that to like a low heat. For 1 can of tomatoes, I'll do about like half a can of water. Just get all that passata out. And for tomatoes, you could use a passata, you could use your homemade stuff, you could use canned tomatoes. And that'll go down naturally, you know? On a nice low simmer, we'll just add a mix of cannellini, borlotti beans. And then we'll really just add that. You're looking at adding almost like, for a liter of sauce, you're doing 1.5 cups of beans. And that's really, you know, very tomatoey, the pancetta, in the base of like the red onions and the celery. And you know, it's already thick, and that's really where you want it. Because it's like, I don't know, what, you know, zagne fagioli, is it a soup? Is it a pasta dish? It's almost like, you know, it's what the Tuscans have, the ribollita. You know, we have our vibe of really hearty soup. And to the Abruzzese, same thing. Like a really just cucina povera, beautiful, hearty, you know, beautiful hearty dish. So the sauce is going, it's really simmering at a beautiful temperature, thickening up naturally with all the beans, the pancetta, the rosemary, the tomato. It's just delicious. Very exciting. We have a nice little 40 minutes left on this. So now it's time to make our zagne. So there's so many ways. You could use the rimacinata, semolina, you could use eggs. Traditionally in the Abruzzese recipe, it's semolina and water. I'm gonna use regular 00 flour with water. So really we'll have just a bit more of a bite to it. And basically it's a cavatelli dough that we're just gonna roll out and cut in zagne shape. So for that, we'll need about 450 grams of flour. So put that in. You'll need 450 grams of flour. We're gonna put it in the food processor. I'll kind of just like break it up and activate the gluten and make a dough ball instead of a mixer. I'll put 450 grams of flour right in here. And you need 250 grams of water and maybe an extra 10 grams depending on the humidity or the day for your dough. Put it all in one shot. There you have it. I'll let the food processor do the job. There you have it. You know, put it down. And this is where it all comes together with a bit of flour. And now we'll just knead it by hand and kind of roll it and make our zagne. There you have it. So with the dough, look at that coming together real nice. Just a bit of flour, and just the minute it stops sticking to your palms or when you're kneading the dough, that's really when you know that your dough is ready. Okay, and like I said, this is a great recipe for cavatelli. This is a great recipe for the zagne. This is just flour and water, but that's the simplicity, and that's where this dish comes. You could do an egg noodle. It's not gonna have the same crunch. You know, you're not gonna have like a lot of the egg yolk doesn't have that protein. So if you're gonna do an egg noodle, use a whole egg to really, you want that white of the egg to really go get that al denteness, that this is what this recipe needs. It needs more of a chewy style pasta. So we opted for the water and flour. So there you have it. Then the pasta really is just kind of cutting it, okay? Now look at that. You need a pasta roller or a bottle, whatever you have. Really not important, as long as you just flatten it out. Look at that. And here you have your lasagne. Kind of put them here, cut them in two, and then basically that's what it is. Some make them thinner, some make them wider. I kind of like them just a bit thicker. And they kind of need to look like they're handmade. That's the whole point of this whole recipe. And they have a bit of the thickness, you know? So I think that that's really where you want it. Honestly, delicious. No, but it's delicious. Tomato, beans, that pancetta, you really get everything. It's not super overpowering. You know, you taste a bit of the rosemary. It's really nice, you know, nice depth of flavor. Water's boiling, salt the water. You know, 2 pinches of salt. And then they'll kind of rise to the top, and we'll make sure that they don't stick at the bottom. Now here we have it, our pasta is slowly floating to the top. All right, our pasta has finally hit the water, and it's been in for like 4 or 5 minutes. We're a minute away. So now we're just gonna work on the finishing of the lasagne fagioli. So this is amazing, beautiful consistency. I'm gonna hit it with some fresh parsley. And if you didn't know by now, the chili for me is always just like, gives you just that little zing, you know? You don't really need to go strain them, just with a spoon, and just even that pasta water incorporated with the sauce is always nice too. The macaroni alla chitarra. The macaroni alla chitarra is the other pasta from Abruzzo, where really that's where you get the finesse. All right. There we go. Look at that. Look at the color on that. And look at that. Some nice Valentini from Abruzzo. And just give it a nice hit of cheese. Ecco, lasagne fagioli. Buon appetito.